with regard to the beauty of things and aesthetics, we can overdo it and become aesthetes, where that's the highest kind of standard. I remember talking to someone who said, if you want to know whether you should listen to a person, check their fingernails. If they're well groomed, that's a man you can listen to. Otherwise, he's a bounder or something like that. And I thought, well, maybe, but I'm just, we all like this. But the point is, you've let that trump everything, just in terms of, look, here's a story, I think Avery Willis told it. He was talking about this guy who I think worked for the Sunday School Board in the days when it was called the Sunday School Board for Lifeway. And he was going to the airport with this little attaché case back in the days when they had attaché hard, and he's all dapper and he's ready to make his presentation and as a consultant to Sunday school planters, and he's got his degrees, and he's getting in line at the airport, and then there's this big old, and I think he was a Texan, whose ID was his belt buckle, and just a big old guy with, who knows, polyester and boots. And he just turned and said, now, if anybody in here is afraid of dying, about to get on this airplane, I'd be happy to talk to you about your soul. And this guy's like, oh no, you just set the kingdom back. We're just working so hard to be well appointed and winsome and the like. And so he's sitting there in his pride at the tackiness of this guy and the rudeness of this guy, and also his clothes. And as the plane got up and you could unfasten your seatbelt, a woman in a business suit, very, very professional woman, got up and went and knelt down in the aisle beside him and engaged him in earnest conversation. And he felt convicted. It's like, oh my, I judge this guy, and he's helping this woman at her point. We need to be very careful about, the Bible says something about, listen, if it ain't truth, bring the hammer down. If it ain't good, bring the hammer down. Not a lot of verses that say, and by the way, if you're not going symphony or you're tacky, then you're a stench in the nostrils of the Lord. I mean, it's a little bit, so it's something not so much to do gotcha with, but to celebrate it when it happens. It's something that's beautiful and well done. I mean, Jesus was fairly Christ-like, and they wanted to kill him. So it's like, don't judge in a harsh way about aesthetics, but let people celebrate. And by the way, we had people in Chicago transferred north to work in a Chicago corporation from another place. They would spend their whole life in the suburbs, afraid to go into the city. We know about and you think, no, there's the Art Institute, there's the Field Museum, there's the lakefront, there's the, all this stuff, and you're just gonna sit down here with your little grill in the suburbs, and it's not evil that you haven't cultivated your artistic interests and aesthetic interests, but wow, you're missing a lot of wonderful stuff God put out there. I was contacted not long ago, a fellow who wanted me to do something in aesthetics, and he wrote ascetics, like denying the self and sort of, eating grubs and living in a cave or something like this. But it's a confusing word to some people. They're kind of uncomfortable with it. They may know the word, but they don't quite know what it means. And courses in aesthetics cover a lot of things. One of the famous cases, it turns up in most aesthetics books. It's associated with a guy named Marcel Duchamp. And he actually went to a porcelain factory and got like a cast-off urinal and took it, and he wrote R. Mutt on it and put it in a show. And it wasn't well received, but now it's in most art books because it's called a ready-made. He didn't do it, but he just picked something out of the culture and put it in and says, let's look at that artistically or aesthetically. Courses in aesthetics cover a lot of things. Sometimes I break it down into this. For one thing, it's partially the history of art, or it's art appreciation, but it's the nature of art, it's the nature of beauty. But it's not just beauty. There are certain things that are engaging that aren't beautiful, but they're well crafted. And sometimes I talk about the questions, what is art? And then what is good art? Or What is morally good art? We talk about those sorts of things. Sometimes I talk about the soul of art, the soul of the artist, the soul of the beholder. I mean, you have the stuff being produced, but then you also have the question of how we should react. Should we partake of that? Should we go to this kind of film? Should we go to a museum? I remember when I was teaching at Wheaton, Francis Schaeffer came out with a film series, How Should We Then Live? In it, he was saying essentially, the David by Michelangelo was transgressive in a way that perhaps Albrecht Dürer's picture of a rabbit, the hare, was not. That it's kind of like that era in the Northern Reformation was more holy than, and like abstract art, then the wheels come off and the like. And it's like a theory of art that says it needs to be celebratory of creation and the like. And you think, boy, I'm sure glad for that kind of art, but I kind of like the David. And I'm not exactly sure, like I've got this seersucker shirt on and I don't know, does this represent furrows in a field or is it just like the juxtaposition of colors and textures? Plato had this theory that it was, when it was at its best, it was mimesis. It was copying things. I did this book on cases and maps. There's a famous case involving a guy named Constantine Brancusi. And he was a sculptor from Romania. And he comes to America, I think it was in the 1920s, and he's bringing some art in. And it's a very abstract kind of piece, and it's kind of graceful. It bulges here and comes to a point. It's called Bird in Space. And he comes to the customs agent in New York, and he says, that's like 30% tariff. He said, what do you mean 30%? I thought art was free. He said, that ain't art. You know, for him, it meant it didn't look like a bird in space. So he classified it as a piece of metalwork. It had to go through the customs court of America to decide whether or not it was art. Well, he says it needs to represent something. That's the point to art. Others have said it's expression. And we have abstract expressionism. And, you know, I'm straining with this issue and like, what am I doing? I'm trying to clarify it or say, I got it. It goes, there, you know, I got it out of me. That's what art should be. For Tolstoy, it's like that which brings about a kind of moral community. We get real snotty in art, Tolstoy said. He hated that. You know, guys are in the symphony and they're really hot potatoes and they look down on everybody and you know, some conductor will get angry and he'll throw his baton and we'll think that's cool. And he says, come on. It's like a little kid's on his first hunt and he gets scared by a bear. And that night around the campfire, he's telling everybody's listening to him and you bring them together. And so some people say, well, that's kind of more like Norman Rockwell, that you see something, you bring people together. But others say, if it's got sentiment or story in it, that's not art. Roger Fry, Clive Bell, they say it's significant form. Whatever the subject is, it's the juxtaposition of colors and images and the like, and the more abstract, the better. And so that's what it's supposed to be. We have conceptual art. I was in the the Art Institute of Chicago, and they had instructions on a wall, like, think about an hourglass with the sands running out, and then it takes a minute and a half, I think, and then that's it. Well, you do the art in your head. You're just standing there, instructions. I go into the next room. They have a big pile of Jolly Rancher candies. And it's like, okay, we're doing this in honor of people who have died from AIDS. Pick up one, unwrap it, and as you let it dissolve in your mouth, think about this person. And then I guess every week or so, they'll come in with a wheelbarrow and dump some more Jolly Ranchers. Is this art? This has led some people to come up with a sociological view of art. Art is just kind of what the art world says it is. It's like the guys who publish the journals, who teach in college, that run the galleries, 10,000 people maybe in America. If they say it's art, it's art. So it's just crazy chaos. But Christians have to say, okay, what is the point to art? I mean, God has given us these creative capacities and these aesthetic sensitivities. What are we supposed to be doing with it? Aesthetics has to do with the senses. They're all in play. I mean, you have gustatory, taste, olfactory, smell, auditory, visual, and tactual. And there are longer lists sometimes that have to do with internal senses like pain and the like, but those are the 5 traditional ones. Every one of them shows up like in the first chapter of Song of Solomon. And you'll have there, the sound of my beloved's name, the kisses, the taste, the touch, like wine, or the fragrance. It's just, the Bible is a sensate book. I was just preaching the other night at the end of Genesis 12, and we were talking about Sarai before she became Sarah, and she's with Abram down in Egypt, and says she's very beautiful. I mean, there is that category of beauty in the Bible. In one passage or two, it talks about the beauty of the Lord, and so that's a category. But then you've got the other side. I mean, in Isaiah 53, we read that you look at Jesus, and it wasn't pretty, nothing to recommend him aesthetically. I mean, and on the cross, he was just brutalized. Don't know whether he got it just right, but Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. I mean, he was just flayed. You even had bones exposed, and just the horrible bloody mess. I think of the gnarliness of John the Baptist. I mean, wearing this, it wasn't like a smoothly tailored camel hair coat. I mean, he was wearing camel skin, and he was just a rugged customer. And yet he is lifted up as a paradigm, but it talks about his appearance. The Bible talks about whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things of good report, and there's a place for appreciating that. One of the earliest things you learn in aesthetics in the Bible connects to the doctrine of ex nihilo, creation ex nihilo. Sometimes I use Taco Bell as an example here. We say artists are into creativity, and they're always creating things, and they're going to their little workshops, and the muse comes down, and bingo, they come out with something new. But we don't create the way God creates. Taco Bell basically has, and most Mexican restaurants, I would say, have, I don't know, let's just say 8 or 10 ingredients. I mean, you've got the meat. I mean, it's like you've got beef, or you've got chicken or pork, and tortilla, and you have guacamole, and you have cheese, and so forth. And like, you can roll it up and make it a burrito, or you can like make it hard or soft and make it a taco. Well, that's just what we do with the arts. We have certain things that we work with. I mean, I guess you could have the periodic table of elements. I mean, you got iron and zinc and so forth. And so we just mix it up. We'll put a little carbon here and a little this here and there, and we'll come up with collage this time, or we'll come up with encaustic painting, where you can get the materials from Home Depot. It's like wax and tar. And in other cases, you can get little chips of some kind of rock and grind it up and make a dye, and then do some watercolors. I mean, but it's just the stuff God made. God makes carbon, I mean, we don't create stuff. We just mix and match it in a way. When my kids were there, we would watch ads for like Old Milwaukee beer, and they'd be hauling Alaskan king crabs or something out, or fishing bass down in Kenner, Louisiana or something. And then they'd haul it up and have a beer and say, it doesn't get any better than this. And I would say to my son, like, is that true? That doesn't get any better than this? And for the lost, it may top out at fish and beer. I don't know, but for the redeemed. And so you teach a bit of that. You can just play off of all kinds of things.
I think that's where the whole subject of aesthetic comes in, and the necessity of a deep Christian sense of beauty, because that does actually, when you if we think that the beauty of God is strictly in church, the transcendence at worship, then we're missing out on so much. We create that duality that you were talking about, that divide between the secular and the sacred. But when you have a much deeper sense of the aesthetic and the beauty of God in all things, and you've been trained to see that, then you can start to find it, maybe even in the fishing, or in the woods, or in your work, or wherever.
I think that with regard to beauty and delight, it's a reflection of God's love for us, that he wires us to find certain things delightful. Eden was nice, gardens are nice. So you ride through Chicago and you come to an L stop and it doesn't say asphalt expanse stop. It doesn't like concertina wire with jewel plastic bag fluttering in, caught in the wire bag. No, it's Forest Park, it's Rogers Park, it's Ravenswood, it's Bryn Mawr, and we're somehow like, no, I ain't seen no woods here, but this is the Ravenswood, Glen Ellen. We have that hunger, and then he gives it to us. Wherever you go around the world, you can get a map and they'll have like scenic route. And whether it's the piney woods of Northeast Texas, or it's the Flint Hills of Kansas, or it's the Alps, or it's the Rockies, or the Everglades, or whatever, everywhere you go, it's like, wowzer, Now, why is that? Why do we find the world in its natural state delightful? And by the way, it just gives evolutionists the dickens. I mean, they have the hardest time with this, and so they'll have theories about, it's like sexual display, like the peacock's tail, and that's what attracts. Or one of them comes up with this. They say, everywhere you go on Earth, then you have preference what's called a blue landscape. That, you'll show people wherever they are and say, okay, here are like 6 places. Where would you like to live? And the one they pick is this verdant valley with a river running through it with some people. And they'll say, see, that's the natural thing, because that's where you're safe. That's where you'd be happy. And so that's why, and then we go there, and that's, optimum for procreation and survival and so forth. So we have that tendency. There are a lot of problems with that. One of the most beautiful places I've been on earth is called Wadi Rum, and it's in the Jordanian part of the Negev Desert. It's where Lawrence of Arabia used to hide out before he would do his raids with the Bedouins. And it'll kill you. If I remember feeling heat through my shoes. You don't want to walk on the sand too long or your shoes will catch on fire. Big outcroppings of rock and no water to be found. And so that should be repellent to us if we select it on the basis of survivability. It'll kill you right away. And yet, we find that striking. Well, the reason is this, because God wired us to appreciate certain things, and then he provided those things. He wired us to love the look of the Alps and to just be struck by them, or the Rockies, or you name it. And then he just made us, he wired us to do that, and they said, like, here are the Alps. You got to be kidding. You did that? All right. And then you'll go to other places that are just dreamy. We love the sound of falling water. I mean, right? The sound machines. So you can sleep better. They don't have like scratchy fingernails. You feeling better? Yes, I'm almost asleep. No, it's like the ocean. And when I was on sabbatical, I had this little app where I could listen to like train going click, 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 click. There's one with a baby's heartbeat. There's one with rain on a golf course. There's like crickets at night. And so he wired us so that we like that. Now, if we'd been crocodiles, it's like, I need to find, some creature with plates and snaggly teeth that'll, whoa, there's one, or they say the most dangerous place is between a pig and a slop bucket or something like that, but we have different appetites. So when I think of God's beauty on earth, I don't think so much in terms of like this platonic ideal that now I will impose this, or it's sort of like, it's love. It's just got love written all over it. That he says, man, I know what will really delight these people. The smell of meat after Genesis 9, meat on a grill, and then they'll be excited like in that'll get them going, and like again the honeysuckle or the pomegranate, and he makes it so. I'm just thinking, look, knock yourself out to try to show that you can give an evolutionary account of why the world is so delightful, the natural world. I've got an answer. God made it that way, and he made us a certain way, and he married them up. Praise God for that sort of thing. one thing that I think is pretty interesting, the Bible says we have a nature, and we're not just random folks. And so you can generalize about what is aesthetically pleasing. If we were just all kind of random, it would be hard to say this is humanly beautiful. And so there is a nature, and so we may speak about generalities in what's beautiful. And I mean, you can tell most people Coca-Cola tastes better than warm dishwater, or Bach, invention or something like that, than fingernails on the blackboard. There are things that are more appealing and things that are not as appealing. It is so much fun to get into the various rules that you have in the arts. I mean, artists are not typically just, okay, I'll just get all hopped up on something or other, my own creativity or Coke or something, and I'll just start getting a paintbrush and I'll do this and that, and I'll just write whatever comes to mind. That's art. No, it's in many respects rule governed. And so we talk about the rule of thirds and painting. Instead of like, here's Aunt Martha right in the middle in front of the Grand Canyon, something more artistically, you'll put it off like one third into one third or this, that. So it makes it more interesting. I remember tweeting when we had rules, this is before I came, against even going to movies. There was a sense that, well, the devil's got that. He's got the silver screen. That's his area. Or it's like, well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes, now, nobody then goes into screenwriting. No one learns techniques that are used here and videotaping us and so forth. This can happen in like, I'm not going into politics. I'm not going into business. I'm not going into the military, because they're danger, danger, danger. And I think there are serious callings to wade in to the arts and claim them for their very best use. I see a resurgence of Christian power in the arts. The others have kind of reduced everything to absurdity. We've kind of run it on down, and it's gotten more and more decadent and crazy. There's a book we use in one of our courses called The Modern or Modernism, The Lure of Heresy. And it's just like, be more and more transgressive and vile and edgy and contemptuous. And you can only do that after a while. And people go like, all right, gag and maggot, I'm done with that. What have you got? Oh, look here. Here's something beautiful. Here's something arresting. Here's something compelling. It's a Christian theme, and it's done by Christians. God's common grace extends all over the place. Incredible artists out there. But boy, isn't it fun to see Christians say, and by the way, here's God's glory, and here's God's truth. Watch us do our art. So, Christians, it's a big, big world of aesthetics and arts and the soul of the artist. And then you get the whole issue of like, yeah, but should I be watching it? Thank God we're Christians. I mean, a lot of people don't have any tensions there. It's not even an issue. For us, it's an issue. It's an issue. And so we wrestle with those things too. What about the soul of the beholder? Let me give you a couple of items that I guess just of advice. Sometimes I talk to people about being a steward of the capacities that God has given us. And, if you have a rational capacity, which you do, the ability to reason, and yet you don't try to stretch your mind or think things through carefully, then you're being a bad steward of your rational capacities. One of the things we try to do in philosophy is just to, as William James put it, it's an uncommonly stubborn attempt to think clearly. You press it, or you do what we call reductions to absurdity. Someone will take a position and you think, well, that's interesting. Let's see how that travels. And then if it gets into weird places, you think, well, we better back up and rethink that. So to be a steward of rationality, to be steward of your body. I mean, if you just sit on the couch and eat ding-dongs and so forth and watch Home Shopping Network and then, have heart failure when you're 32, you probably should have been a better steward of your body. Being a boring preacher is kind of an assault on people's aesthetic sensibilities. That if they can take a 40-minute sermon and make it seem like it's 2 hours or something like that, I'm not manly unless I go long, you know. Well, you've only got 10 minutes worth of interesting stuff. I can make it work, you know. And people are just drooling like, Lord, just shoot me, you know. And that's an aesthetic thing. Everything he says is true. Everything he says is virtuous. But don't be so boring, all right? I mean, have illustrations. Put some raisins in the oatmeal. Help it a little bit, not because you're manipulative or cute or something like that, but you put something together thoughtfully. It's the golden rule. I love aesthetics. I love to talk about it, to deal with people on it, to see Christians wrestle with it. I wish I could be more infectious. And I wish you guys would get into the conversation even more, because God gave us that sensibility. And let us stir it up with the most Christian orientation and dedication for the glory of God.